SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Good morning, Baltimore. Charm City shocked the gaming industry last week when its mayor, Brandon Scott, had the city file a lawsuit against DraftKings and FanDuel, claiming that the sports betting titans are intentionally preying upon weak people with issues around responsible gambling. Is this a frivolous lawsuit or the first in a slew of government action against the books? We're going to discuss just that on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is, as always, brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, managing editor, I keep getting the title wrong, of SBC Media. It still hasn't sunk in. Joined by Charlie Horner, media manager of SBC Media. Hello and welcome, Charlie. We've got a juicy one today.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's nice to see that DraftKings lawyers are keeping themselves
just
busy
throw
again.
It on the pile. I was really surprised by this. And I was also pretty surprised that there were other people who did not seem to think this was a big deal in our industry. And that was a bit shocking to me because, frankly, I've never heard of a local government suing a regulated operator for breaking the law.
No, we were just talking off air, and we can't really think of another instance of this happening. And yeah, considering that Maryland is on the up and up, it's a legal regulated market. These are the two biggest regulated operators in that market. For the mayor of the biggest city within that state to file suit and to come out with these, quite severe claims.
Yeah,
I think it's shocking. I think it's really surprising, and I think this is a massive story.
I do too, and I it's fascinating to me too because we emailed Maryland Lottery on Friday and haven't heard back, but it was pretty late business hours, and we're just getting going in the U.S. here on a Monday. That I don't know what they'll have to say, but it puts the regulator in a really bad spot because you're implying in this lawsuit that they're not doing a very good job regulating. I guess we should, for those who are unaware, actually explain what the details of the lawsuit are. Basically, the city of Baltimore, its, municipal government, and in turn, the mayor of that municipal government, Brandon Scott, have worked with a private law firm to sue these operators for violating the city's ordinance about consumer protection. They kind of go back to the well that we've seen of a number of customer lawsuits against DraftKings. There might be a couple against FanDuel. Most of them tend to be against DraftKings. You have an unclear bonus offer at sign up. You use predatory technology to rope in people who are exhibiting signs of gambling addiction and offer them more money to keep taking part. Your VIP program is irresponsible because people will come to you and say, I don't have any money. I don't get paid until blah, blah, blah. And your response is not, here's a number you might want to call, but here's more money to pay you, to give you for your account as bonus dollars. But yeah, if you're the regulator, I'm trying to think how I would feel about it. I think I'd probably be mad.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, the mayor has kind of gone over their heads and said, yeah, you're not doing a very good job in regulating these operators, and we're going to step in and do your job for you, essentially.
Which begs the question, did they go to them first and let them know that this was coming? I would love to kind of know the behind the scenes of how this developed. In a release, this is what the mayor had to say about FanDuel and DraftKings. These companies are engaging in shady practices, and the people of our city are literally paying the price. DraftKings and FanDuel have specifically targeted our most vulnerable residents, including those struggling with gambling disorders, and have caused significant harm as a result. This lawsuit is a critical step to hold them accountable and protect all. I'm going to go with Baltimoreans. Never heard that in my life, but I don't know a lot of people from Baltimore, to be fair.
I think one of the surprising things about this is that Brandon Scott isn't your traditional sort of anti-gambling reformist who wants to fundamentally change the industry and or just ban it in general. We're talking about someone
the ceremonial first bet.
Exactly. We're talking about someone who's been on a bit of a journey since Maryland launched regulated online sports betting. So yeah, I'm really interested in that sort of journey that he's been on, and sort of all this evidence that he's gathered, and how that perception of his has changed to the point that we're in this lawsuit today.
Well, my question for you also is, how much do you know about the city of Baltimore?
Yeah, this is the sort of bi-monthly Charlie is not American
Let's
segment.
put you on a spot about American things you don't understand. But it is important, and I'll explain why. But, how much do you know?
Yeah, not a lot, to be honest. I know it's in Maryland. I know it's the biggest city by some distance in Maryland. But other than that, not too much.
So Baltimore is, in the cultural perception, a city that has its fair share of struggles. Like that TV show, The Wire, you hear people talking about all the time. That's about Baltimore and like the crime and corruption and things that happen in Baltimore. So it's this perception of a city that is already like a struggling people dealing with a lot of crime. I don't know, to be fair, how current that perception is, but historically, that's how Baltimore is viewed. It's also a city where 60%, I believe, of the city is African American population wise. Something I learned from a new book out from Jonathan Cohen called Losing Big. We're going to have him on the pod later this week. I had heard this, but he kind of quantified that sports betting is extremely popular in African American populations. It kind of explains why Jamie Foxx, Kevin Hart, these are people that these operators are getting as spokespeople, the big operators. So the perception that they are preying on a population that is already kind of at risk for all sorts of things because it is Baltimore, I think adds a little bit to this story that the international crowd might not necessarily be aware of. Yeah,
that's definitely something that I wasn't really aware of, and I don't think that many people internationally will pick up on that, and it does add another layer to this. Yeah, so think of like a rundown city that's like economically struggling, and that's kind of what we're dealing with, especially right now at this particular economic juncture, which is what led Dustin Gouker in his newsletter to kind of poo-poo this lawsuit. Like, don't you have more important things to do? And I'm just like, I mean, if you read the lawsuit, it sure seems like they firmly believe that these people are being preyed upon. Like, it doesn't seem out of bounds or unfair to me. But I think it's because so much of this story pulls in these mainstream media reports that we have written about on and off over the past couple of years. And lately I'll be honest, SBC Americas hasn't really written as many kind of write-ups of things the same way we did when the 60 Minutes story hit and that New York Times series hit. But we just had I believe it was Washington Post, another Maryland newsletter or newspaper, write about VIP programs this week. So are we paying enough attention to these mainstream media critiques as an industry? I think a couple of years ago we did. I remember we did a lot of coverage of this sort of stuff. We did the little documentary in New Jersey a couple of years ago. We spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about it. I remember you, Jess, wrote a few op-eds about sort of optics in the industry, and that was sort of off the back of that New York Times series of so-called exposés. I think it probably has dropped off the agenda in the last 18 months or so. I think that there's just been other storylines to tell, and this industry moves quickly, and I think the mainstream media moves even quicker, and so things can just fall off the attention. But I would say, yeah, we probably could do with paying a bit more attention to this sort of external perception of the industry, because when there is coverage of the US sports betting industry, it's usually quite bad publicity. So yeah, I think there's a few lessons that we could probably learn from these.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna take a sip of coffee since it's very early on a Monday. We're gonna take a quick break, and then I am gonna come back and probably offer a rant.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
All right, welcome back to iGaming Daily. As Charlie just pointed out, it's almost that there are too many mainstream media stories depicting the industry in an extremely negative way for us to even keep tabs on it anymore. It's become so commonplace. And I think what's really starting to bite the industry in the rear end is that they just kind of dismiss it. Oh, these people hate gambling. They are going to hate everything they do. Why don't they do these reports about the black market? It's not fair. And there's never this moment of reflection to say, okay, we see that, a major outlet like the Washington Post is questioning our VIP program. Maybe we should try to write a story in which someone gets a bit of like a look behind the curtain at VIP. I doubt that's going to happen. Maybe we should change our VIP program, because we've seen that countries like the UK have had to be forced to change these programs in a way that wasn't ideal for, making the most money at the end of the day. What can we do to make these stories stop versus just deflecting every single story as nonsense?
Yeah. I
struggle
to disagree. I do. I struggle to disagree, because these stories they haven't slowed down over the last couple of years. They keep coming on a fairly regular basis. The lawsuits keep coming in. I mean, it's a little bit of a running joke about how these industry lawyers are constantly at work, but it's because there are constant lawsuits being filed, and whether people like it or not, this is because players do feel sometimes that they are being targeted in a negative way. So optically, the industry has to come back and say something and tell a positive story about what these programs are doing, why they need the space and the budget to have these marketing programs that they're sort of embarking on, because otherwise, from the outside and with all the external noise, the public are going to perceive gambling as a negative, and it's difficult to see how that perception changes without the industry coming out and changing something.
That's the thing, is it's a lot of responses to things with no meaningful change. At a point, and I'll be honest, I've had conversations with PR people where they have said, we'd like to give you a bit of a look at some of our RG stuff and what we are doing. And it's just a matter of kind of finding time and setting it up, because it's not the most urgent thing happening for me at the moment. But, you need that. You've made associations. There is a new RG campaign from AGA that started last week that I listened to a call on the research of something Bet Smart. Sorry, AGA. I will remember it eventually. But, looked at customer responses, making sure that it is something that people are engaging with. And I fully believe that the industry cares about this. It's more difficult of a sell to tell me that it cares about it above bottom line and all else.
Mm-hmm.
But they care about it. They for sure can. Nobody wants somebody to lose their house. Like, nobody wants that. I don't think any operator would want that. And they've said many times, like, that's terrible. We would never want that. But are you turning a blind eye? Do you have a blind spot, particularly when it comes to VIP in terms of how you're treating things? Because this is now a city filing suit about this program that, off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 other civilian lawsuits that are alleging the exact same thing. And they just haven't gotten very far along in the process. But there's at least one DraftKings lawsuit that we know is going to a judgment in Massachusetts about its sign-up offer. And there's 2 or 3 others kind of floating around still early in the process. We've got, this one about the New Jersey dad whose wife is suing on behalf of her and her children for like bankrupting them. And all of these, there's not a decision yet, but it's mostly because it's still fairly early in the process. And the one that happened to be furthest along, I hate to phrase it this way, but like they got a little lucky that the plaintiff is a convicted criminal with a history of financial crimes. So it was very easy to kind of write this off as frivolous or like a rare case. But now you're getting a lot of people drawing attention to this. You get John Oliver, who did a Last Week Tonight about it a couple weeks ago. And I don't think the answer is pointing out that John Oliver got some things wrong, which he did. The answer is like, why? I think it's fair at this point to say the sentiment around this industry is not great.
No, you're absolutely right. And it does come back to that point that this industry needs to tell a different story about what it is that they're doing on responsible gambling. It's all well and good telling people that you've got responsible gambling tools, and there are a lot of fantastic people in this industry doing a lot of great things to help protect players and keep players safe. But we know how much VIP schemes are valued, to the point where operators are going to court against each other to prohibit people privy to VIP information to go into other operators. We know that VIP data is almost impossible to get hold of. The industry just needs a different story to tell. It can't just keep coming back to, we need to be regulated because black market, or we need to be regulated because we have RG tools. There needs to be something different, or just to pull the curtain back a little bit, just to change that perception. Because at the moment, like you say, Jess, it's almost exclusively negative.
Yeah. And the thing is like, the Maryland framework is very heavy into supporting minority business entities and getting the local community involved. It is home of the only sole ownership female-owned sports book in the U.S. There's lots of good stories, and they just get overshadowed by this. It's play smart from the start is the new AGA campaign, by the way. I felt really bad that I butchered that one. And yeah, it's very much getting overshadowed by this. Next steps are DraftKings and FanDuel will file a response in the state court. If we hear anything from the lottery, the regulators, we will certainly update it on SBC Americas. And then, in the meantime, we're going to continue to write these stories as these lawsuits and such come in.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to keep coming in, because they do. Yeah. We've covered so many, and it's just about that response.
Oh, one other thing to keep an eye on. Wouldn't be an episode with you and I without a mention of Massachusetts. They are in the process of kind of looking at how bettors get limited and requiring operators to provide that sort of data. And I feel like Eileen and company are probably going to have opinions about this. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they started asking questions about VIP programs. And now that they've established they're going to ask for limiting bettors, I wouldn't be surprised if they started asking for data related to VIP. And I'm sure the operators will tell them it's proprietary information, how we handle these programs, but something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we love the MGC and their meetings.
MGC. On that note, Charlie, anything going on in your neck of the woods that people should check out and read?
There's plenty going on across the network. So I mean, our team are always quite busy, keeping on top of all the stories. One example I can give you. Actually, we did a feature with Risk last week, actually about the human touch in a high tech world, about player support. Player retention,
nice.
Touches on VIP schemes as well. So I would push our audience to go and read that one.
Awesome. All right, check that out. Check out SBC Americas and come back tomorrow to check out another episode of iGaming Daily.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.